You don't remember this night. But Patrick, this was a defining moment in our relationship. It was late. You had just gotten home. I was in bed. You were taking off your shoes and placing them in the closet. You turned around and started pacing the width of our room back and forth. You were you were moving through the process that we had to do of getting your dad out of the month-long stay at the hospital and successfully moved to the however long stay at the rehab nursing home. I don't know if it was the movement of your body back and forth or maybe just the stress that you and I had both been under, but your track of thought changed and you started talking about your relationship with your dad and asking these questions. Now, my brain even actually tries to close down as I try to remember because the questions that you were asking were so intimate. They were so ingrained in me. But you were walking through your dad's decisions, his choices, and these questions that they were like, how the hell did we get here? How did this happen? How in the world could we have prevented this? How could we protect your dad? How could we protect you? How could you protect us? I'll speak from experience that these questions that you ask of or to an alcoholic or an addict very rarely are ever answered. But nevertheless, you were asking them. And I was so enthralled and in awe of you. And as you were moving back and forth like these waves, I was moving with you. And within an instant, I began to feel these hands pulling on my brain, trying to get my attention. And I batted them away. I pushed them down because I was with you. I was with you, processing, listening. I had never heard anyone do this before. But the hands came back, and they came back with force, and I subsided under the wave, and I went into my mind to follow those hands and see who and where they connected to. To no surprise, they were connected to me. They were connected to young Grace, about 11, 12 years old. I found myself crying in my closet at my childhood home, 9403 Vickery, the big green house on the hill. A few moments prior to finding myself in the closet, my parents had just sat down, myself and my two oldest siblings, to tell us that my sister Emmy, who I'm the youngest of four and she's the next in line, 8 years between us, Emmy had just been arrested. She was on her way to Truman State University, and she got pulled over in Macon, Missouri with a bong and some weed on her. Pretty surprising of a college student. But growing up with Emmy, and at that time especially, our relationship was pretty bad. We fought every day, and to make it even more dramatic, our bedrooms were on either side of the house. So just imagine the slamming of the doors, the stomping of the feet, the constant contest to win. It was like WWE on Friday night, every night. But I grew up fighting. I grew up fighting my sister. I grew up fighting my family, and I grew up fighting myself. And while fighting with my family was relatively normal, fighting with my sister was on a whole different level. And a lot of the times, it was because we could see each other. And I mean that in the way that I saw how she was different. I saw what I, as a child, interpreted as fighting tactics, personality changes, outbursts, behavior shifts. I now know that those were indicators of mental health. But at the time growing up, those were the hot buttons that we pressed on each other. But after being told that my sister had been arrested, um, I did what I normally would do. I closed up, I walked upstairs, and I released privately internal processor. I don't know if it was something that broke, something that shifted, something that softened, but in that moment of me sitting down on my knees in my closet, I could see the root of my and my sister's relationship. And the only thing there was love. I emulated her. I wanted to be her. She was brilliant and beautiful and confident and everything that young Grace was not. But as I sat there, I started asking questions, and Patrick, they were verbatim the exact same questions that you were asking yourself. How could this have been different? What could I have changed? How could she have done something different, maybe a few days, weeks ago? Why didn't I protect her? I knew all of her fighting tactics. Why didn't she protect herself? And answer, the answer that I left myself with for years was that I, young Grace, had failed to protect my sister. I began to hear you again, Patrick. I began to hear your voice. I was coming back to our bed and our bedroom and our two dogs, and I could see you again. And I could hear you. And you were talking about forgiveness and acceptance and things that I was just in awe of you again. I couldn't fathom, because Patrick, you did things that night, intentional or not, but you chose to acknowledge your and your father's relationship. You named and questioned out loud, articulating these thoughts. And you connected with someone outside of yourself. All of these things that I had never practiced or even thought to put in place, until that moment where I came face to face with myself and saw the shame that I had been carrying like a blanket, the shame that has built walls and broken relationships. That night, you helped me meet myself. You helped me connect with someone outside of myself and accept these things that I could never control. So I don't know if you'll ever get your answers to these questions. Maybe you will. But Patrick, as we swim closer to August 28th, 2020, our wedding, I just want you to know that any question that weighs you down, any story that makes you feel shitty, I will always be here and I will always listen. Thank you.